In this video, we're going to be looking at another example of marginal analysis. Our example is that we are told that the monthly demand for a product is given by the function P of Q equals 1,000 divided by the square root of Q, where P is the price in dollars per unit and Q is the number of units that can be sold at that price. We're also told that Q is in the interval between 100 and 800. So that means that our demand is somewhere between 100 units and 800 units. We're supposed to calculate the price if the demand is 400 units, calculate the monthly revenue as a function of the quantity Q, calculate the revenue and marginal revenue when Q equals 100, and then interpret those results. And the business owner who's selling this product is analyzing whether they have the price set optimally. Should they raise the price or lower the price to increase the revenue? Let's take this part by part. The first thing we're supposed to do is calculate the price if the demand is 400 units. That means we're supposed to figure out what our price is when our Q is 400 units. If we plug in 400 into our demand function, we're going to have 1,000 divided by the square root of 400. This is going to be 1,000 divided by 20, or $50 per unit. Next, we're supposed to calculate the monthly revenue as a function of the quantity Q. So remember, our revenue always equals our price times our quantity. And we have this formula up here for our price that we're going to insert for P. So we're going to have 1,000 divided by the square root of Q times another Q, and if we simplify here, this Q and this square root of Q here can cancel so that we have a square root of Q in the numerator. So we're going to end up with 1,000 square root of Q. So that's our revenue function. Next, we're supposed to calculate the revenue and marginal revenue when Q equals 400. So if we first start with the revenue function, we know the revenue at 400 is going to be 1,000 times the square root of 400. That's going to be 1,000. Square root of 400 is 20, so that's going to be $20,000. So if we have a demand of 400 units, our revenue is going to be $20,000. Next, we're supposed to calculate the marginal revenue. Well, to calculate the marginal revenue, we first need to find our revenue function here. Remember, that was 1,000 square root of Q. If we calculate the marginal revenue, we're finding our derivative of our revenue function. This is going to give us, let's see, we're going to have 1,000. Let's see, we could rewrite this as 1,000 Q to the 1/2. So we're going to have times 1/2, whoops, I forgot a 0 there, times 1/2, Q to the 1/2 minus 1. So that's going to be, let's see, 1,000 times 1/2 is going to be 500, and we're going to have Q to the negative 1/2. So this is going to be 500 over square root of Q. So if we plug in our 400, we're going to get 500 over the square root of 400. So that's going to be 500 over 20. So that is going to be, let's see, it cancels, and that's going to be 25, and that's $25 per unit. Okay, so now we have our two values. Our first value was $20,000, and our second value is $25 per unit. To interpret the revenue value, we would say when the demand is 400 units, the revenue is $20,000. To interpret the marginal revenue, we would say one of two things. We could say when the demand is 400 units, the revenue is increasing by $25 per unit, or we could say that the revenue generated from selling the 401st unit is $25. In this next part, our last part, it says the business owner is analyzing whether they have the price set optimally. Should they raise the price or lower the price to increase the revenue? Remember what we know from the last part. We found that the marginal revenue at 400 was 25. So if we sort of visualize what we have going on, we've got our revenue function here, and here we have 100. Now it could also be looking like this. It could be going down at 100. Whoops, not 1,100. We know that we're in this situation where it's going up because, so we know we're in this situation over here because our marginal revenue was positive, which means that our revenue is increasing at 100. So in order to increase the revenue, I need to be heading this way from 100. So that means I need to increase our Q because I want to be over here where the revenue is bigger. In order to increase our Q, that means we're increasing the demand. And remember, to increase the demand, the way that happens is we lower the price. If we would have had something like marginal revenue at some value equals a negative number like -30, then we would be in a situation over here where our revenue is headed downhill. So if that were the case, if our revenue was headed downhill, that would mean that we would need to head to the left on our curve. That means we would need to lower the demand. In order to lower the demand, the way that happens is you increase the price. If we look at our revenue and decide whether our revenue is heading up or our revenue is heading down, that means our marginal revenue is positive versus our marginal revenue is negative, we can then decide whether it's better to lower the price or increase the price based on, do we need to lower the demand to get to a higher spot on the revenue curve, or do we need to increase the demand by getting to a higher spot on the revenue? That's it for this video. Hopefully you found it helpful.